So the camera had died, but while it was charging, I just took off the intake, took out the battery tray, and the tray support, and you know, I just looked around, looked for each plugs, and I got all the wires put away, make sure nothing is on the transmission. And also I disconnected these cooler lines. Also took off the starter, which was 2 bolts, 14mm bolts. You need an extension on them, well, for one of them. For the most part, that is it for the top. It's not really much, you know, you just gotta keep checking yourself. Also disconnected the vehicle speed sensor, the VSS, so everything is ready to be let go. I just have the transmission mount, and I just have the bolts that connect it to the motor. Now for the bottom, I had to take off this rod that connects to the front. Just gotta get this nut out. Kind of takes a while, you know. You need a deep socket for it. Then after you disconnect that one, the tension is kind of released, so you could take off these bolts right here. 17mm bolts, if it'll focus. Right there. And so yeah, there's no tension on them, so you're not going to be stripping out any threads on them. That's the most important part of taking this rod out, is make sure you don't strip the threads that's with these bolts. So now I have enough room to drop the transmission. I'm going to just go ahead and start. I'm going to put a jack underneath the transmission. Then I'm going to take off the transmission mount. Then I'm going to take off the bolts that are connecting the transmission to the motor itself. I also had to remove the splash shield, as you can see here. I mean, it's just real easy. You take off some 10mm bolts. I believe it probably was about 8 bolts, and it came off. You don't have to take off the bumper, so it, you know, pretty convenient. Also, in the rear mount, if you go under the vehicle, you see the rear mount, and there are some bolts, I believe 3 bolts, that are connected to the transmission that keep it supported, so you're gonna have to go under and take them out. I already did that, but I know the camera wasn't down there with me, but I went ahead and did that already. Here's the bolts right there. There's 1 bolt, then there's the 2 bolts on the right there. So I already took those out, so the rear mount is ready to go. One thing I forgot to mention, when the camera is off, I also took off these, there's about 8 10mm bolts that connect the torque converter onto the flex plate. Normally there would be a, a cover right here, aluminum cover that's held on with 14mm bolts. So yeah, once I took off the starter, through the starter hole I could fit this, let's see if you can see it, it's a pry bar. So I just turned the engine with the pry bar, and I got each bolt. You know, it'll come down like by 3s. There would be 3 down here. Also with the wrench, you could also grab onto one of the bolts and just bring it down. So that makes it a little bit easier. I was having a little bit trouble taking the transmission apart because I took off all the bolts. Well, I thought I took off all the bolts and it still wouldn't come loose. But there's a bolt right here. See where my finger is at, right here. So that's the only bolt left, and then the transmission should come off. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that off now. Alright, transmission is out. Only thing I have left to take off is the flex plate and the shifter cables. And I think that should be it. Overall, pretty good. Transmission was pretty heavy. It really is. Here it is right here. Big ass rock. And the torque converter fell out also. I already threw it on the side of the house so I could go take it to the scrap. But yeah, this will definitely lighten up the car some. Alright, I cleaned everything up in the bay on the transmission side. Used purple power and a power washer. Got all the grease out. Next, I will be taking out this rear main seal. I'm going to take off all the 10mm bolts holding it in. Also these bottom ones on the oil pan. I'm not dropping the oil pan, just taking out the plate so I could change the seal out. Everything cleaned up for the rear main seal. Got the plate all cleaned up. Just gonna go ahead and install the seal now. And as always, I'll be using the OEM Honda rear main seal. So I have the rear main seal in there. I know the way I do it is pretty ghetto, but I mean it works. And it's flush in there. Always make sure you have it flush. And I just had to clean a little bit of some dirt got in the grease, because when you get these seals from the dealership, they do have already grease in them, so you just slide it on. And yeah, next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and put some Honda Bond on the edges and on the bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and bolt it right up. Alright, I'm going to be installing the flywheel, and also I got some new bolts for the flywheel from ARP. I'm just going to put a little bit of Loctite on them, just so they don't back out, because I've heard of stories of bolts backing out on people, and then you have to take down the whole transmission again. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit just for the extra security. Alright, now the clutch I'm going to be using is a Killadesignhtx Stage 1 organic clutch. Here's the clutch itself. Got the alignment tool. Throw out bearing. And got the pressure plate itself. I got the clutch all tightened down, torque to spec. Also what I did, I took down the heat shield. I took off two 10mm bolts over here, and then two 10mm bolts, which is by the resonator. It's just right down there. I don't know if it was needed, but I just did it anyways. And then just pulled the heat shield down, and then just took off the 10mm bolts that were in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take out the shifter assembly that's on the inside, and then just go ahead and install the manual shifter.